Hello guys, welcome to Redditor's Revenge. Here we post amazing revenge stories daily. And if you want more content like this, please do subscribe to the channel and stay tuned with us. Moving to our today's first story, about the revenge OP and his father took on his martial art instructor, and the gang who all bullied OP for being weaker. Now story. I 12M have always been a weak and smaller guy. I got picked on at school a lot for my size and for being a nerd, so it was never really a good experience. What made things worse is that my dad is this super tough army officer, and I always wanted to be like him, but he was always traveling anyway, so he never had enough time to show me how to be strong or tough. I made up for it by being the smartest kid at school and trying my best to get the highest marks. I thought that if I can't do things physically, at least I can be good at something intellectual. While that's great in the future, it didn't stop bullies at school from beating me up. There was one kid, Ricky, who was always on my back and constantly bullying me. He was on the football team, so I was easy prey for him. Every time I'd try to talk it out, he'd just beat me up and tell me he'd do it again. He did all kinds of bullying that a kid can do, beating, wedges, locking me up in places. This year though, it became actual terror. He was trying to impress this girl, so he thought the best way to do that was to be even more of a bully and to beat up a bunch of kids, not just me. Because I was his easiest prey, he had it out for me worst. One day, he chased me throughout the school with a small knife. I hid everywhere, but he still found me. It was during a school party, so there were not enough people to see what was happening. In the end, I had to beg him not to hurt me and he just humiliated me in front of a group of friends. Another time, he locked me up in the supply closet and I had to miss an important test and lost a ton of marks. The thing is, the school thinks he's a saint because he's the vice principal's son and nobody ever catches him doing anything. Reporting him is an absolute waste of time because the whole school system is completely unfair. Most importantly, when my dad would come home, I would never tell him what happened. Sometimes I'd come late or have a bruise or something, and I always had to make up some lie to him so that he doesn't think I'm a weak coward. I just wanted to be like him, but I never had the guts to try. I know that he would understand and wouldn't think less of me, but it still would have felt bad trying to tell him anything. I knew I had to make a decision and finally take a stand after what was probably the worst thing Ricky has ever done to me. It was my dad's birthday and he had just come home, so I had to be there right after school. As soon as I finished and was walking home, Ricky and his gang of friends grabbed me into their car and drove me miles away to the woods, and left me there. My phone was dead and there was nobody and nothing around me. I had to walk about 10 miles before I found a bus and of course, I was very late. As soon as I entered, my mom was scared and sick and everyone was disappointed that I couldn't make it. I couldn't tell them what happened, so I had to make up some lame excuse that I got locked in the bathroom and couldn't get out. I could see the look of anger and disappointment in my dad's eyes, so that night I decided to do something about it. I found this ad for a martial arts gym in my area and I decided to sign up. I told my parents that I have some extracurricular stuff after school, and I started going there. Of course, I was the weakest kid in the whole group and everyone was already very good. I felt awkward and wanted to leave, but the instructor took me under his wing and he seemed like a very nice guy. He sat down with me and asked me why I wanted to practice MMA, so I told him the whole story and he sympathized. He told me that he had a bully of his own and that he would help me fight Ricky off and make him regret it. I felt very encouraged and began going over there 3 times a week. The first week was a cakewalk. We just did some basic exercises and learned the very basic stuff like how to form a fist, but it was mostly just cardio stuff. It was going very well and I felt like I was advancing, but we weren't fighting yet. I have to say I was impatient, as Ricky was getting worse and worse. In the second week, we started learning basic fighting moves that don't require much effort. I told my instructor everything I needed and he started training me personally. He was very patient and showed me everything very slowly and I enjoyed it. Soon, I could finally throw a decent punch and kick without falling over, but I still had miles to go. My mental health was better and even my mom could see that I'd come home from school feeling and looking much better. In the third week, things started getting more serious and we were finally sparring. I wasn't the best student, but I also wasn't the worst. Because I was so motivated, I was doing quite well for myself. By the end of the session, I learned how to properly punch and kick and learned one chokehold. I thought this would be very beneficial against Ricky and I had my hopes up. A couple of days later, after school, Ricky came over and just wanted to mess with me like always, so he pushed me to the floor. Normally, I would have taken the beating or run away, but because of my MMA, I felt stupidly confident enough to take him on, and I tried. I tried to fight back, but it was embarrassing, and I realized that I did not know enough to fight him. On the contrary, my trying to fight just made him angrier, and he hit me even harder. I think that time was the worst beating I had ever gotten. When I came back to the MMA gym the day after and my instructor saw me bruised and beaten, he suddenly got very serious and asked me what was wrong. I told him about the whole deal, and it was like he switched 180 degrees. He became very serious and almost military-like and told me to come to the gym alone after the usual MMA sessions and that we would train alone privately. I thought it'd be a good thing at first, but he felt almost offended by the fact that his student got beat up. I didn't doubt him though and came back a couple of days later, an hour after the usual session. Everyone had gone home and it was just me and him. That day, he trained me harder than I had ever trained before. Things were extremely serious and he didn't pull his punches while sparring. I got hit a couple of times and it hurt, but he kept telling me to keep going and not be weak. I couldn't keep up with him and I felt like I was fighting for my life. Each time I got down, he would yell at me to get back up and continue fighting. I had never seen him like this at all, and even when I told him to stop or that the punch hurt, he would throw another one. I was extremely confused as to what was happening, and verbally things were getting even worse. He kept asking me if I wanted to be weak my entire life or if I wanted to be humiliated again. He said some hurtful stuff in the name of encouragement and I felt belittled and scared. At the end of the sparring session, he told me that everything was just in the name of sport, and this is how true warriors train. I took him at his word and he went back to smiling and being nice, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of genuinely being uncomfortable the whole time. I asked him if all sessions will be private like this again, and he told me yes, and that I needed this to get over my bully and stand a chance against him. He didn't even ask for more money or anything. He genuinely took it as a mission to harden me. When I came home that night, I saw my mom crying. I asked her what was wrong and she told me everything she was scared of. She told me that I come home bruised and she knows I'm lying when I tell her that it's falls or sports or whatever, and knows that someone is doing this to me. She was crying because she had no idea what to do, so I told her that I was getting bullied at school but that everything would be better from now on. I didn't tell her about the MMA, but I told her that I found a way to stop the bullying, and that there would be no more bruises. I begged her not to tell Dad and she told me that she didn't and wouldn't, and that I should just take care of myself. Seeing her like this gave me a stronger drive to continue the MMA thing and not stop. I decided to endure all the hardship that could come with it and went back to my instructor. For a month though, I endured the most difficult training he could throw at me. He was extremely violent and strict, gave me no breaks whatsoever, and there was not a single session I left without bleeding from my mouth or having a bruise somewhere on my body. At one point I doubted if he was doing this for me and the bully, or if he found some sick enjoyment in seeing me suffer so hard. After about 2 months of training, I met Ricky after school on my walk to the gym again. He came to tease me as usual and make fun. But this time, instead of walking away, I stood still, looked him in the eye, and told him that if he didn't leave me alone, I would break him in half. He started laughing hysterically, telling me that I was a loser who watched too many movies, and tried to attack me again. This time though, I had the upper hand and I beat the living snot out of him right in the middle of the street. I used all the training I had and made him suffer for a full 2 minutes until his friends ran at me. I couldn't go up against 6 other guys, so they grabbed me and beat me up. Even though I was bleeding and getting beat up, it still felt good and I was smiling at seeing Ricky just as messed up as I was. I went to the gym afterward and told my instructor everything that happened as if I should be proud, but his reaction was completely different. He got furious and told me that I brought shame to him that he trained me and I still got beat up, but I told him that it was 6 other guys and that at least I beat up the big bully, but he wasn't convinced. He told me to get into the ring and I did. We had a sparring session that quickly went extremely south. All of a sudden, his fighting became way more intense than usual and he started throwing knockout punches and putting me in locks. I couldn't keep up with him, so it turned into him just beating me up in the ring for a full 3 minutes while I was defenseless. It was worse than anything Ricky and his friends had ever dished out on me, and the shouts and insults he was throwing made everything worse. He told me that I was a failure and a waste of time and that I wasted his teaching, and at the end of his bullying and physical abuse, he kicked me out of the gym. That night, I went straight to the hospital and couldn't even go home. My leg was broken, my nose was broken, I had 2 broken ribs, and I could barely talk. My parents came to the hospital to ask what the hell happened, and I told them the whole story from the very beginning. I told them that it was a mistake to try to learn MMA on my own without telling them, and I told my dad that I just wanted to be like him. My dad sympathized with me and asked me for details about the gym and the instructor. I told him everything and he suddenly got up. I was scared of what he might do, so I went after him to see what he would do. He ran over to the MMA gym and I followed him. I didn't enter, but I was looking through the window. First, I saw him talking to my instructor, but I couldn't hear anything. Then, he noticeably started shouting and my instructor was shouting back. Suddenly, my dad punched him right across the face and I ran in. They were both fighting, but my dad got the upper hand, pinned him down, and beat him to a bloody pulp. My instructor got a few hits in, but Dad's military training had him use unusual techniques and some dirty moves that put my instructor on the floor quickly. While pinning him down, my dad kept wailing on his face and then grabbed his leg and broke it. I was watching in both horror and amazement, as I had never seen my dad work like this before. My dad saw me enter, grabbed the instructor and put him in a hold, and told me to punch him in the face. I was hesitant, but my dad yelled at me, so I went over and started beating the snot out of his face. I felt angry at what he did to me, and even though my hands hurt, I still kept hitting him hard until he was down. We went home and I sat down with my dad. He explained to me that fighting is not always the answer, but that I should never let myself be humiliated like that. He told me that he would show me what I need and help me fight off the bullies and get rid of them. Over the next couple of months, my dad and I trained together and Ricky left me alone since that time I beat him up. But his friends had taken the reins of the bullying and wanted to have revenge for their friend. I stopped backing down and running away though, and I kept fighting them back constantly even if I got beat up. My dad would tell me that it was fine and that he would continue to help me. Ricky's best friend, though, Jake, started leading the pack after Ricky backed down. He became way more violent and aggressive than Ricky, though, and constantly chased me down with the entire group, not just him alone. I fought them off a couple of times, but one time, he got so heated that he broke my finger, and as soon as I went home and told my dad, he told me to get in the car and we drove over to Jake's house. My dad knocked on the door, and when his dad opened it, my dad was extremely polite at first and told him that he was here to talk about his kid's behavior at school, and that there are some issues between him and me. Jake's dad was the complete opposite and threatened my dad to get off his property or he would shoot him. My dad still kept trying to de-escalate the situation, but it wouldn't give. Jake's dad called his son to come down and he did. He asked him if I was bothering him at school and he said that I beat him and his friends up. Of course, it was a lie, and I tried to defend myself, but he wouldn't believe me. Once again, he threatened to shoot my dad if we didn't leave, so my dad punched him right across the face and I grabbed Jake and beat him up. It was me and my dad and against both of them, but my dad did quick work of Jake's dad and told him that he was an army officer, and if he ever threatened him again, his kid would never see him again. After that one time, I never got bullied again. I was like a king at school and everyone treated me extremely well. I also got much closer with my dad and we became good friends. In a weird twist of fate, it was like that bullying was the best thing to happen to me since I finally got what I wanted. Now, here is the end of the video. I hope you guys are enjoying my content. And, in my opinion, OP's martial arts instructor is a far worse bully than Ricky and his gang. I'm pleased his father taught him a lesson. They deserved everything they got, and I hope they never bully another student again. Guys, I want to know what's your opinion about this story, and what do you think about Ricky and OP's martial arts teacher? Please share your opinion in the comments section. So before leaving, please hit the like button and do subscribe to the channel to stay tuned with us for more awesome stories.